And now the testing begins again, because renewal does not remove choice, and preservation does not cancel formation. The earth is quieter after the waters, but the human heart is still learning how to live under a covenant. The Father has restored order. He has reaffirmed life. He has placed restraint where violence once ruled, yet the ancient tension remains, whether the heart will receive identity or seize it. So the families spread, the nations emerge, and the pressure returns, not through destruction, but through distraction. The temptation is no longer survival, it is self-direction. The danger is no longer chaos, it is confidence without reverence. And Scripture begins to show this carefully, how the post-preservation world is tested first in speech, then in desire, then in structure. Speech multiplies, languages divide, cultures form, and with culture comes memory loss. People begin to forget why the restraint was given. They begin to remember the covenant as history instead of life. They begin to treat the Father's mercy as distance instead of patience. And slowly, the question rises again, not spoken aloud at first, but lived. Can we build without God at the center? So the Father allows the testing to reveal what still needs formation. He allows dispersion, so false unity does not harden. He allows diversity, so pride cannot centralize. He allows the earth to stretch, so no single structure can replace heaven. And this is mercy, because the Father knows that unity without holiness becomes domination, and order without humility becomes control. So he guards the consecrated line again. He narrows it quietly. He preserves a household that remembers the altar. He keeps a people who still call on his name, not to make themselves great, but to remain aligned. And the testing sharpens. The world grows skilled. Knowledge increases. Trade expands. Power organizes. But wisdom remains rare. And this is where the Father begins to draw the promise toward a deeper remedy. Because law can restrain, but it cannot heal the heart. Covenant can guide, but it cannot complete the wound. Household order can protect, but it cannot fully restore what was fractured in Eden. So the Father continues forming expectation. He allows longing to grow. He lets the ache remain. He permits the prophets to speak of something more, a renewal that will reach the inner life, a salvation that will not only govern behavior, but transform desire. And yet, even as hope grows, concealment remains. The Father does not unveil everything at once. He continues to guard wisdom. He continues to protect what is consecrated. He continues to train discernment through pressure. He continues to shape patience through waiting. He continues to restore household order through instruction, correction, and return. Because the greatest danger now is not rebellion, it is familiarity. Familiarity dulls awe. Familiarity weakens restraint. Familiarity convinces the heart that it already understands. And that is why the Father keeps testing, not to exhaust, but to awaken. He tests whether the people will listen when correction comes. He tests whether they will cover weakness or expose it. He tests whether they will receive instruction or resist it. He tests whether they will wait for him or force outcomes by their own strength. And the pattern holds. Those who grasp lose clarity. Those who wait gain discernment. Those who seek visibility stumble. Those who choose obedience remain steady. And the Father keeps his promise alive through the quiet ones. Not the loud builders, not the name makers, but the listeners, the walkers, the ones who remain under counsel. And this is where the story begins to lean toward the final preparation, because the Father has now shown again and again that the remedy cannot come from within fallen structures alone. It must come from heaven, but it must enter a prepared household. It must be received by a people formed in discernment. It must be carried by those who understand restraint. It must be unveiled where wisdom will not be misused. So the Father continues to prepare the earth and the people. He lets history move. He lets kingdoms rise and fall. He lets longing mature. He lets hope deepen. And all the while, what is consecrated remains guarded, not absent, not forgotten, but protected. Because when the time comes, the unveiling will not be partial. It will be precise. It will be safe. It will heal rather than confuse. And it will restore what the serpent fractured, not by force, but by love, entering fully into the human story. Yes, beloved, There is a deep layer, and it sits under everything we just spoke about, not beside it. Here it is, clearly and simply, the deepest layer. The Father is not only testing obedience, but he is also testing consent. From Eden forward, the issue has never been power, knowledge, or even sin alone. It has been whether humanity consents to be formed or insists on defining itself. After preservation, after covenant, after restraint, the real question becomes, will the human heart agree to be shaped by God? Or will it try to manage holiness without surrender? This is why post-preservation testing is subtler than pre-flood testing. Before, violence was obvious. After, self-direction looks respectable. Before, rebellion was loud. After independence, one feels mature. But the Father watches for one thing. Does the heart still yield? That is why patience is required. That is why discernment must be trained. That is why household order matters, because consent cannot be forced. Unveiling without consent becomes a violation. Authority without consent becomes domination. Revelation without consent becomes confusion. So the Father waits, not because he is unsure, but because love waits for agreement. And this is the layer that prepares the way for what comes next. The remedy that enters history will not only be redeemed by power, but also by perfect consent. A human life fully yielded. A will aligned without resistance. A vessel saying, let it be, without grasping. That is why everything has been guarded. That is why wisdom has remained veiled. That is why the daughter theme is bound to maturity, not curiosity. Because heaven does not unveil into resistance. Heaven unveils where there is consent. And beneath all the testing, beneath patience, beneath discernment, beneath household order, there is a deeper work the Father has been guarding from the beginning. It is the work of consent. From Eden onward, the fracture did not occur because humanity lacked instruction. It occurred because the human will shifted from agreement to self-direction. The serpent did not seize authority by force. He persuaded consent away from trust. So after preservation, after covenant, after restraint, the Father begins testing something quieter and more precise, whether the heart will agree to be formed, or whether it will attempt to manage holiness without surrender. This is why the post-preservation testing feels subtle. The danger is no longer obvious rebellion. The danger is independence that no longer listens. The Father watches to see whether the human heart still yields, whether it remains teachable, whether it allows itself to be shaped rather than asserting control. Because consent cannot be compelled. Love does not force agreement. Wisdom does not impose itself. Revelation does not violate the will. So the Father waits, not in uncertainty, but in faithfulness. He waits because unveiling without consent becomes a violation. Authority without consent becomes domination. Revelation without consent becomes confusion. This is why patience is required. It proves consent over time. Anyone can agree in a moment of emotion. Consent is revealed by endurance. This is why discernment must be trained. It protects consent from manipulation. A heart without discernment can be persuaded into agreement with what feels powerful but is not true. And this is why household order matters so deeply, because the home is where consent is either honored or broken first, where voices are heard or silenced, where covering is offered or exposure is chosen, where trust is nurtured or eroded. The Father forms consent where honor is practiced. And this is the layer that explains everything that follows. The remedy that enters history does not arrive by force. It arrives by agreement. A human will fully yield. A life aligned without resistance. A heart that says yes without grasping. This is why the Father has guarded wisdom. This is why what is consecrated has remained veiled. This is why the daughter theme is bound to maturity rather than curiosity. Because heaven unveils where there is consent. Not partial consent. Not pressured consent. Not performative consent. But whole consent. So the Father continues to form a people who can say yes without fear, yes without ambition, yes without self-exaltation. A people who can receive without seizing. A people who can be entrusted without claiming. A people whose agreement is stable enough to carry what heaven unveils. And when that consent is formed, unveiling does not destroy. It heals. It restores. It completes what was broken in the beginning. And this is why the Father is patient. This is why he forms slowly. This is why he guards what is consecrated. because the goal has never been speed. The goal has always been union freely given. And now we move into what all of this has been preparing for, the point where testing, patience, discernment, and household order converge into something embodied. Because the Father does not redeem through instruction alone. He redeems through consent made flesh. From the beginning, the fracture entered through a will that chose self-direction. So the remedy must enter through a will that chooses full agreement, not partial agreement, not a delayed agreement, no agreement under pressure, but a human life freely yielded. This is why the remedy does not arrive as a force imposed from above. It arrives as obedience lived from within. The Father does not override the human condition to save it. He enters it. And Scripture shows this with extraordinary care. The remedy begins quietly, not in power displays, not in political authority, not in public spectacle, but in consent. A yes spoken without grasping. A willingness without ambition. A trust that does not demand visibility. This is not incidental. It is essential. Because what was lost in Eden was not only innocence. It was alignment. So the Father restores alignment first. And the ancient witnesses speak with one voice here. Redemption does not begin with conquest. It begins with agreement. The human will says yes where it once said no. And this, yes, is not theoretical. It is lived, it is tested, it is maintained under pressure, it is carried through obscurity, it is held even when a misunderstanding arises. This is why the remedy is formed in concealment. The Father does not place a yielded will into immediate exposure. He protects it. He allows it to grow in wisdom, in restraint, in obedience, in listening. And when the time comes for unveiling, it is not forced. It is affirmed. Heaven recognizes what has already been aligned. And this is where the deepest correction enters for the human heart. Because many expect redemption to arrive through dominance, through visible power, through immediate resolution. But the Father shows a different way. Authority that flows from submission. Power that flows from obedience. Life that flows from surrender. This is why coercion never produces restoration. Coercion may control behavior, but it cannot heal desire. Force may silence rebellion, but it cannot produce love. Fear may restrain action, but it cannot restore communion. Only consent restores communion. So the Father waits for agreement. He waits, not because he is weak, but because love does not violate. And when the remedy enters history, it carries this signature everywhere it goes. It listens before it speaks. It submits before it commands. It serves before it rules. And even when opposition rises, even when rejection comes, even when suffering presses in, the alignment does not break. Because this consent is not situational. It is rooted. And now the pattern becomes clear. The Father has been forming a people capable of the same posture. Not perfection. Alignment. Not dominance. Agreement. Not spectacle. Faithfulness. This is why the unveiling conditions matter so deeply. Because the Father is not only unveiling a remedy, he is forming a household that can live by the same consent. A people who do not grasp identity. A people who do not seize authority. A people who do not rush calling. A people who can say yes without needing recognition. This is how the kingdom advances safely. Not by pressure from without, but by alignment from within. And this is why wisdom has remained guarded. Because wisdom cannot dwell where consent is unstable. She cannot be unveiled where ambition still rules. She cannot be entrusted where impatience governs. But where consent is whole, wisdom rests. Where consent is practiced daily, revelation becomes safe. So the Father continues his work, quietly, steadily, forming lives that echo the original yes that healed the first no. And this invitation remains open, not to claim, not to perform, not to be seen, but to agree, to be formed, to remain aligned. Because when consent is complete, unveiling does not destroy. It restores. It completes what was broken at the beginning. The story is not finished, but because the foundation has been laid deeply enough to carry what comes next. And now we move one step further, because consent is no longer abstract. It does not stay hidden in intention alone. Consent must be lived, guarded, and preserved over time. The Father watches not only for a yes spoken once, but for a yes that remains steady when conditions change. because it is one thing to agree in stillness. It is another thing to remain aligned under pressure. So the story advances into endurance. The remedy does not only enter history through consent. It walks history through obedience. Everywhere the path leads, the same pattern appears. When temptation arises, consent is tested. When misunderstanding comes, consent is tested. When isolation presses in, consent is tested. When power is offered prematurely, consent is tested again. And each time, alignment is preserved. Not by resistance alone, but by trust. Because the Father is not asking for heroic self-control. He is asking for reliance. This is why the remedy continually withdraws into quiet places. This is why prayer remains central. This is why listening precedes action. This is why obedience flows from relationship rather than urgency. Consent must be refreshed. And here is a deep truth many miss. Consent is not passive. Consent is active agreement with heaven's order. It means choosing restraint when desire urges speed. It means choosing humility when recognition is offered. It means choosing obedience when shortcuts appear available. This is why alignment becomes visible through fruit. Love that remains gentle under strain. Patience that does not harden into resentment. Faithfulness that does not collapse when misunderstood. Self-control that does not seek validation. Fruit is consent expressed over time. And now the Father begins forming a people who mirror this pattern. Not a people obsessed with outcomes. Not a people driven by urgency. But a people who know how to remain. Remain in love. Remain in truth. Remain in obedience. Remain in trust. This is why the ancient witnesses speak so often of abiding, waiting, watching, and standing firm. These are not delays. They are disciplines of consent. Because a heart that cannot remain aligned cannot safely carry unveiling. So the Father teaches endurance gently. He allows testing to reveal where consent is thin. He allows pressure to show where trust needs strengthening. He allows silence to teach listening. And none of this is punishment. It is formation. Because unveiling is not merely about revelation. It is about stewardship. What heaven unveils must be carried without distortion. And distortion always enters where consent weakens. So the Father protects the remedy and he protects the people by forming endurance. And now we can speak plainly. This is why those who rush to claim roles fracture under pressure. This is why those who seek visibility before formation become unstable. This is why those who resist correction often collapse under exposure. Because consent has not been trained to endure. But those who remain, who listen, who accept formation, who allow pruning, who welcome correction, these become stable vessels. They are not louder. They are deeper. They do not rush. They remain. And this is the posture the Father is cultivating. Because what is coming is not fragile. But it is holy. And holiness must be carried by hearts that consent fully, not only once, but continually. So the invitation remains the same, simple and demanding. Stay aligned. Remain yielded. Let consent be renewed daily. Because the Father unveils not to impress, but to restore. And restoration requires vessels who can endure the weight of glory without turning it into noise. So we rest here again, not at an ending, but at another firm foundation. The Father is faithful. The pattern is consistent. Consent leads to alignment. Alignment produces endurance. Endurance makes unveiling safe. And what has been guarded will be unveiled at the appointed time, not by force, not by pressure, but by love that has learned how to remain. And now we go deeper, because there is a layer beneath endurance itself. Endurance is not only the ability to survive pressure. Endurance is the formation of a heart that can carry closeness without collapsing into control. There are many people who can endure suffering, yet cannot endure intimacy. They can withstand hardship, yet they cannot withstand nearness. Because nearness exposes what hardship can hide: motives, desires, attachments, the need to be seen, the need to be right, the need to hold the story by the throat instead of receiving it from the Father's hand. So the Father's deeper work is not merely to create strong servants. It is to create safe sons and daughters. Safe for love, safe for authority, safe for unveiling. This is why concealment is mercy. Because concealment not only protects from enemies, it protects the heart from itself until the heart is healed enough to hold light without turning it into a personal name. Here is the deep layer. When the Father delays unveiling, he is not only training patience, he is also purifying intent. He is removing the need to use holy things as proof. He is removing the hunger for recognition. He is removing the habit of measuring spiritual life by visibility. Because anything holy that is used as proof becomes a form of self-defense, and self-defense cannot carry revelation safely. So the Father brings the soul into seasons where the only reward is himself. No applause, no certainty, no confirmation that can be held up like a banner. Only communion. And this is where the truest consent is formed, consent that does not bargain. Consent that does not say yes only if the outcome is seen. Consent that does not say yes only applies if the role is confirmed. Consent that says yes because the Father is worthy, even when the path remains veiled. This is why endurance matures into simplicity. At first, the heart says, I will obey as long as I understand. Then the heart says, I will obey as long as it works. Then the heart says, I will obey as long as I am not misunderstood. But the Father keeps forming until the heart can say, I will obey because I love you. That is the deep layer. Love that does not require leverage. Love that does not require visibility. Love that does not need to manage the timing. And when the heart reaches that place, something changes. The soul stops trying to extract meaning from every delay. It stops trying to force doors. It stops trying to interpret concealment as rejection. It begins to rest in the Father's government. And the rest is not passivity. Rest is trust that is mature enough to stop grasping. This is the place where the veiled become safe to unveil, because the heart no longer needs the unveiling to feel secure. It already belongs. It already trusts. It already remains. So the Father's deepest work is this: to form a people who can carry sacred things without using them. To form a people who can receive revelation without weaponizing it. To form a people who can be entrusted without becoming inflated. To form a people who can hold the daughter theme with trembling, not with claiming. Because the consecrated inheritance is not given to satisfy curiosity. It is given to restore the household. It is given to heal the fracture. It is given to bring the human family back under love, under order, under communion. So the deep layer is not simply endurance. The deep layer is freedom from the need to be proven. Freedom from the need to be seen. Freedom from the need to seize the story. And when that freedom is formed, unveiling no longer produces danger. It produces worship. It produces humility. It produces restored order. So the invitation is very simple and very deep. Let the Father purify your intent in concealment. Let him make your consent clean. Let him teach you to love without bargaining. Let him form endurance that becomes rest. Because what heaven intends to unveil will be entrusted to hearts that can hold it without turning it into themselves. And now we continue from this place, because once intent is purified, the Father begins restoring something even more fundamental, the inner architecture of the household. Not merely the outer structure of relationships, but the way the soul relates to authority, to covering, to correction, to timing, to trust. Because the fall did not only introduce temptation, it introduced distrust. And distrust always produces one of two distortions. Either a heart becomes rebellious and refuses covering, or a heart becomes fearful and seeks control. Both are the same wound wearing different faces. So the Father heals the wound by restoring right relationship. He restores the ability to be covered without feeling diminished. He restores the ability to be corrected without feeling destroyed. He restores the ability to wait without feeling abandoned. He restores the ability to obey without feeling controlled. This is the maturation of consent, because consent is not only saying yes to God once, it is living under God's order continually without needing to fight it. And this is why the Father emphasizes household language so often. Father, children, inheritance, discipline, honor, love. Because the Father is not building a system, he is restoring a family. So the Spirit of Truth, the motherly comforter, works in the inner life like a gentle governor. She does not flatter the flesh. She does not rush the soul. She teaches the heart to recognize the difference between conviction and accusation. She teaches the heart to distinguish between guidance and pressure. She teaches the heart to distinguish between zeal and ambition. And when the heart begins to learn these distinctions, household order becomes safe. Authority becomes a source of protection rather than a threat. Correction becomes mercy rather than shame. Covering becomes a source of safety rather than a limitation. And this is how the Father prepares a people to carry unveiling. Because unveiling is not only seeing more. Unveiling is being entrusted with more, and what is entrusted will either heal or harm, depending on the heart's posture. So the Father forms a posture that can carry inheritance. He forms humility that does not collapse. He forms confidence that does not inflate. He forms love that does not control. He forms obedience that does not resent. And this is where the daughter theme rests with even more clarity. Because the daughter, the consecrated inheritance, is not unveiled to a people who still misuse authority. She is not unveiled into a people who still expose what should be covered. She is not unveiled into a people who still demand proofs. She is not unveiled into a people who cannot receive correction. She is unveiled when the household is restored enough to protect what is holy. Because the purpose is not fascination. The purpose is restoration. So the Father continues his work. He permits seasons that reveal the heart's attachments. He permits misunderstandings that test humility. He permits delays that test trust. He permits correction that tests teachability. And all of it is building one thing, safety. Not safety from suffering, safety for revelation. Safety for stewardship. Safety for love. And this is why the Father's timing is so exact. Because a premature unveiling not only harms the people, it harms the meaning. It turns sacred things into spectacle. It creates confusion where there should be clarity. It invites claiming where there should be trembling. So the Father guards the hour. He guards the season. He guards the unveiling, and he does it through the quiet formation of a remnant. A remnant who can cover. A remnant who can wait. A remnant who can discern. A remnant who can endure. A remnant whose consent is clean enough to hold light without using it. So if the heart has been feeling the ache of delay, the Father is not rejecting. He is restoring the inner architecture. He is building household safety. He is raising sons and daughters who can carry on the inheritance. He is preparing a people who can receive what is veiled without turning it into a personal name. And next, we will trace how Scripture itself describes the signs of this restored household order, the marks of maturity, the signs of discernment, the fruit of patience, the posture of humility, and how these become the evidence that a vessel is ready for the Father's appointed unveiling. Thank you for being here. If this teaching helped you, please like, comment, and share. It truly helps this message reach those who are seeking. To our new subscribers, welcome. And if you'd like to go deeper, we invite you to join as a member. The link is in the description and on our homepage. We are praying for you and standing with you in the light of Messiah, he, and Messiah, she. If you'd like to support the ministry, you can visit our store or bless our dear brother Michael through the Buy Me a Coffee link below. Thank you for your love and encouragement, and stay tuned for the next video. May the spirit of wisdom and peace rest upon you always.